All right, welcome back to the SEO Insider Podcast. My name is Chris Raulf. I'm an international AI SEO expert and also the founder of Boulder SEO Marketing. Today, I'm beyond thrilled to introduce a true veteran and thought leader in the digital marketing space. Our guest is Steve Krull, the CEO and co-founder of Be Found Online, a highly respected digital marketing agency based in Chicago. Steve, I just came back from your neck of the woods. I was in Wisconsin last few days. So with extensive experience in helping businesses achieve online visibility, Steve is not just an agency owner, he's someone who's navigating the complexity of a rapidly evolving industry firsthand, particularly at the intersection of SEO and AI, artificial intelligence. He's known for his insightful perspectives on strategy, team leadership, and adapting to new market realities. Steve and I recently had a candid conversation about the challenges and opportunities facing agency owners today. And I'm excited to dive deeper with him into how AI is reshaping the world of SEO. And Steve, you and I actually connected at DigiMarcon in Denver and then again in Seattle. And I was very impressed by your moderator skills. You know what you talk about. So Steve, welcome to the show. Anything that I missed?
Chris, thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful introduction. You talk about AI and SEO, and I just read the stat the other day that ChatGPT is getting 5.5 billion requests now.
Wow.
It's crazy. The growth and the scale is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so this is what we're going to talk about. We actually landed our first client that found us on Perplexity, which is one of my favorite Gen AI tools. So this is the reality that we're facing, right, as agencies. We need to deal with AI and SEO. So let's dive right into this. So let's talk about navigating the current economic climate with AI. In the current economic climate, with clients tightening their budgets, how can SEO agencies leverage AI tools to not just survive, but adapt and potentially thrive? What specific ways can AI help agencies with efficiency, client value, or new service offerings when clients are crunching the dollars more than ever? And I think both you are experiencing this right now as we speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. Coming out of the election here in the United States in November, I felt that the economy would settle down following the election. And you and I have talked about this, it hasn't.
Yeah.
The economy remains sort of what I like to call half pregnant. And as such, companies are, as you said, tightening their belts. So they're also tightening their belts because they don't know where AI is going. So we as agencies, we've had this conversation. We have to adapt on both sides of it, right? You have to adapt on both sides of it. How do I use AI to improve my business and improve efficiency? And I know you've done a lot of this work in your agency, and we've done some of this work too. And then the other side, we are in this brave new world. For the first time in 20 years, I'm optimizing for something not named Google. And while I still have to, it's this amazing idea that the landscape is changing and shifting so rapidly now. And optimizing for AI, it can't be totally different, right? It's not a paradigm shift. It's an evolution, but it's just so interesting to see how AI is capturing its data and then how we can be part of those conversations. So it's really interesting to think about both sides of that equation as an agency wanting to gain some more efficiencies through using AI, and then as a client or customer that you need to still show up. You need to show up and search. And to your point earlier, you talked about getting your first lead or first closed deal from Perplexity. We all want to show up there. We want to show up in those conversations. So the question becomes, how do we do that? How do we make sure that we're having those conversations? And there's a couple of things that I'm testing that I'm not at liberty to talk about today, but I think we've got some really cool ideas for some of the things we're doing. I'm testing on 2 sites right now, and one of them is live, and the other one should go live in about 3 weeks. But I'm super excited to see, in fact, a friend of mine made a change to one of his pages, and in 24 hours later, he started showing up for the question that he was trying to address in ChatGPT. So if you're talking about a quick turnaround, there are optimizations we can make to get us in those conversations. It's super cool.
Wow. So I'm already foreseeing a part two, maybe a few months down the road. If you're willing, able to share some insights, then.
I'll be happy to. Happy to.
Cool. So what I noticed, I just spoke at Digimarcon in Philadelphia, and so I talked about AI, SEO, agentic AI, how it's impacting SEO and generative engine optimization. And I would say out of 100 people, there were probably 5 hands when I asked who's actually using an off-the-shelf AI tool or a self-built AI tool as part of their processes. So I'm shocked, right? How even many leaders in our industry
Right.
that they're like behind. So that being said, let's talk about the virtual agency owner and scalability. So for agency owners like you and I striving for more self-sufficiency and scalability, how can AI agents or similar technologies contribute to achieving this? What are the current limitations or ongoing challenges that agencies face when looking to delegate more strategic thinking to AI?
You've got to make sure that you're testing comprehensively. So we're uploading and building agents. We're building strategy agents for our target clients, right? I want to be able to plug some things into AI and get ideas back. And what I need to do is I need to make sure that's airtight with what I'm building, because I want to leverage that to turn it into whether a strategy brief or a proposal or even deliverables for a client. The key to me is to make sure that our intellectual property and our process is well known in whatever I'm building, so that I can then make sure and test it and beat the crap out of it, so that you know you're getting appropriate results. And then you've said this too. Okay, take the results, but always take your results with a grain of salt. Make sure you have an editor at the back end too. But building the agents, in fact, I'm in the process now of building a mini me. I'm going to take my video, everything I've written, and everything, and I'm going to upload it so that I can. It's going to sound funny to say this, but so I can ask myself questions,
Yeah.
um, and ask the AI to broaden that and even broaden my own horizons. But separately, and this is a cheat, and I'll share, but we also, a lot of people do it, is that if I get this agent built out and it's working appropriately, I can now have an EA anywhere in the world follow some of my social profiles and respond as me by posing a question to Steve the AI in ChatGPT or Perplexity, wherever I build this. I can have them ask the question to get something back in my voice to publish on social media. Now, I'm not going to cheat wholly, because I still like to publish. You like to create content, and so do I, Chris. It's fun, and I love engaging. But to get broader reach, I think that the future is in agents and helping agents build things, and taking an agent for a small piece of your process and making sure it's clean and it's tight, and then using that across the entire team so that you can now deliver what I call them as crisp and clean results for clients. We have a process. We've evolved a process over the course of the last many years, and I know you do too. In fact, you show it during your presentation. You show
Yeah.
the big boxes, and you show where AI has helped improve or influence your process. And the idea that we're doing that is just like any other cheat code we've ever used. I used to use spreadsheets to shorten formulas, right? I use text blocks to copy and paste. I do these things to make my life easier. And I think making my life easier is also going to help make customers' lives easier, and even the team here at BFO make their lives easier if we can replicate those things. Because everybody has, what do we call them, standard operating procedures or SOPs. So
Yeah.
we have SOPs that say step one, step 92. And if I can squeeze that down to say steps 1 through 10 and okay, now we're done, I've saved everybody time and I've improved the output. Everybody loves that.
Awesome. Man, Steve, you are so far behind, yet so far advanced, right? I think when we spoke, I told you, like, we had created the virtual Chris um, about 6 months ago after I woke up in the middle of the
Hmm.
night and like, oh my God, we have the technology, right? My
Yeah.
team, they don't get my time, right? So
Hmm.
if you're an agency owner out there listening to what we're talking about, this is what you need to do. You need to create a virtual Chris, a virtual Steve, make that information accessible, not only to yourself, but also to your team. Yeah, so that's a great point. We now actually already implement this for every client out there. So if you're as an agency don't already do that, this is something that's a key takeaway from this conversation. And Steve, I applaud you for being at the forefront of implementing this.
And I want to throw this out for you, Chris, and get your opinion on this too. But even if people aren't ready, and it's not difficult to build a mini Chris or a mini Steve,
Yeah,
and it's getting easier and easier. Even at the very least, build and save prompt sets in a Google Doc so that you can share with your team, so you can build from that. If there's a starting point for someone, because people do get afraid. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do with building a mini Steve?
yeah.
And the idea is take some of your own SOP material, build that out, and then keep stacking onto it, keep stacking onto it, keep stacking onto it. Because to your point about only 5 hands going up in Philadelphia, that scares me that so few people are leveraging it.
But I guess, I mean, in a way, it was shocking to see, yet I was sort of happy to see it because that means that agencies like yours and mine, we're way ahead of the game, right?
Yeah, so opportunity knocks, right?
Oh, yeah. And, more and more potential customers, they're now asking, are you an AI SEO agency? I'm like, I can say, yeah, we are. Let me show you. We built an AI agent that does X, Y, Z, and these are the results. So this is happening right now. Not sure if you check Keyword Planner or any of the other keyword research tools, what the increase is in search volume for AI and SEO related search terms. Holy cow.
It's off the charts, absolutely off the charts.
Yeah.
And questions, people asking questions about AI and SEO and about best practices in AI and SEO. Those questions are also off the charts too. If you take a look
Yeah.
at SEMrush and popular questions, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like we said, it's a brave new world and it's so much fun.
Oh man. So in my opinion, it's a gold mine, right? I mean, did you expect that this would happen in our lifetime?
No, it's really, really interesting. So I mean, it's 3 years plus now
Yeah.
that OpenAI said, okay, here it is, let's go play with it. And Google got caught quite frankly with their pants down on AI. They're catching up and pushing hard, especially now with current events and AI mode rolling out everywhere. I think Google's saying, okay, you know what, OpenAI, you got a head start, but we're pretty good at this game too. And what's really interesting to me, and I'm waiting to see this, is obviously Google, I'm going to say it, Google has a monopoly to protect, and there's a lot of money at stake. And OpenAI hasn't yet figured out how to advertise. And Google needs to figure out how to run ads alongside their AI mode, which is happening, but it's going to be interesting because I also think, I know we're talking about SEO, but I think advertising changes. And I also think some of the intent in some of what we're asking of AI is going to influence advertising. And I'm really interested to see where that part of it goes too.
Oh man. So on that note, before we go to the next question, so I just checked, I just updated the chrisraulf.com website. It's all about AI and SEO, me being an expert in this field. and publishing
Hmm.
content. And if you go to, what kind of keywords drive traffic to the website, you now see those sentences, right? Google now makes that available.
Yeah.
The stuff that, people search, when your website shows up in the AI overviews or AI mode soon. So this is reality. This is happening.
Yeah.
All right,
But
next question.
that's a hold on. I'm going to mark that as a great tip for people. Get
Yeah.
into Google Search Console and look at this because it's been updated and you're getting to see some of the stuff that's causing you to show up now.
Oh yeah, if you don't do that, man, you're missing out.
Yeah.
All right. So from old SEO to GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, shifting agency focus. Um, as the industry shifts from traditional SEO towards generative engine optimization, GEO, what do you believe is the most significant strategic adaptation SEO agencies need to make? Like, what advice would you offer to agencies that feel they are way behind in embracing this AI driven approach?
So I had a conversation with uh, well, I can't think of his name at the moment, but he runs Everyday AI. And his advice was if your agency is far behind or you feel they're too far behind, he said, run a hackathon. But hackathons usually last a weekend or a couple of weeks and you build stuff. He said with AI, you could run a hackathon in an afternoon. Bring parts of your team together, bring your whole team together, and challenge people to leverage AI to solve a business issue or process improvement, look for efficiency or effectiveness, build something new or improve something old, and get a head start. And what I can almost guarantee, and this is what we find out when we ask the question, who's using AI and what for? Every hand in our agency went up. Everybody's using AI for something. And what's interesting is that most people were using it for different things. And it's the idea of collecting that tribal information and saying, what can we do to improve process overall if we share what we're doing? And it's amazing to see the efficiencies gained when you stack it up around keyword research and about basic ad building and other things like that, even SEO, building out a content framework and pillar-based content strategy with AI gives you a real head start. We're starting to use, I'll go full on this, Google Gemini 2.5 Pro with deep research mode
Oh my God.
and building out a, it's really a gigantic brief. I've done such an incredible amount of competitive analysis and market positioning for the benefit of our clients. And I want to match that up ultimately against what their search console says historically and what the keywords are, because we're at a point now where strategically, where we would go and look at existing keywords, we'd do some keyword homework and we'd say, here's a keyword footprint for the site. We're at a point now where we can test logic of the client's website or changes we want to make to a client's website before we ever publish those things. How does this stack up to the competition? Now, you're not going to get a score on a 1 to 10 scale, but you can build that. If you want to build that, if it's part of your standard process, you could build an agent that will give you a relative score compared to the competition across a set of keywords or across a footprint of content. And the ability to do those things is just absolutely incredible. So it's super cool. I love seeing this stuff.
I mean, it's mind blowing, and I'm, at that point where I'm bummed out that there's only 24 hours in a day. We wake up and I'm like, I have like 300 things that I would like to tackle, and it's really frustrating that we only have so much time because the capabilities, the availability of technology that we now have is so incredible. And it allows people like us that I believe who understand what is, doable with this technology. It's really
Hmm.
frustrating. So that's something that's really bumming me out. And, if that's my biggest problem, then, life is not so bad.
So I have a friend who's using his mini me because he's enabled the agent and he's also got decades of content.
Uh,
He's actually leveraging that agent to build the new stuff he wants in his persona, which is really, really cool. So he's got it built out to a point where he can feed it a series of prompts and he can start doing some of that new work that you're talking about based on his own agent. He's had dude, it's incredible. I'm blown away by it's funny because I feel like you're doing a ton. I'm doing some. I know a lot of people are doing a ton, and every day there are, I don't know, dozens of new tools and new opportunities being published or promoted or shown. And the idea of, and people stitching together, and people that I trust and respect saying, here are my 5 favorite AI tools and why. And to see that and think, it's mind blowing. It just breaks my brain to say, oh wait, I need to use Notebook LM differently than I've been thinking about
yeah.
it. And it's crazy. So that's one of the other things is that, well, we talk about ChatGPT, we've talked about Perplexity, we've talked about Gemini. Well, think about as an agency uploading all of your client information into Notebook LM and drawing insights for your clients from everything. You can upload the communication, you can upload the performance reports, you can upload notes from calls, upload your AI transcripts, and boom, instead of a crazy mixed up messy folder in Google Drive, you actually now have the ability to synthesize that information into reasonable outputs.
Yeah. So on that note, yesterday when I flew back from Milwaukee to Denver, there was a little bit of weather, so it was like a 3-hour flight instead of 2:20 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I updated the entire chrisraulf.com website based on, using my virtual me to because it speaks in my voice, right? Because we
Sure.
embedded all the presentations that I gave, so it's like net new content, right? So although it's fully AI generated content, what's on that website, it was actually it's net new content because I created the source content. So that's just one of those use cases, even if, yeah.
It's awesome.
Eh, Anyhow,
Awesome.
we could go on forever here. Let's talk about the EEAT factor in an AI-driven world. In the evolving AI landscape with, AI overviews and AI mode and AI-generated content becoming more prevalent, how critical, in your opinion, is EEAT? Experience, expertise, authoritativeness,
Mm-hmm.
trustworthiness for content and brands? Content and brands. What strategies
So,
SEO agencies advise their clients to actively build and demonstrate strong EEAT? And what role does the personal brand of an expert play in a company's overall SEO success? That is a loaded question.
wow, that's big, 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 big question. So I'm going to start with the idea that AI has heightened the industry's awareness, maybe not understanding of EEAT, because Google just keeps beating on they're beating the drum for EEAT, and it's wonderful. I don't know about your experience, but I'm going to assume it's somewhat similar. I can still go look at, pick 10 websites, and more than half are not appropriately leveraging EEAT.
Yeah.
And that it's that wake up call because EEAT is a gateway to AI. It's not the final answer to GEO and making sure that your content shows up when somebody's doing an AI based search. It's that you've not done the basics yet. And it's amazing to me even further how many of these websites are still on WordPress who don't use categories, who don't publish authors, who don't use publish dates, and the and don't do schema.
I know.
And so my mind goes boom, like wait, you're just missing out on opportunities. In fact, I'm just started a pro bono content audit for a group that I work with, and I looked at the site. In fact, worked on the site a few years back, but it wasn't in scope to do this, right? We did a pro bono project some time ago. And now we're looking at sort of this refresh. And I said, oh, let's just start with content. Let's leverage, let's do a content audit, and I can use AI to build the audit. And then I can start looking at pillar pages and categories because they don't use them. And articles aren't authored. And well, actually, some of the articles are authored. It's one of those things where it drives me crazy. But the good news now, from an EEAT perspective, is that people are starting to use it in conversation who didn't use it before. And to your initial question about how important is EEAT, I think in the eyes of Google, it's very important, but it's only, I don't know if it's the tip of the iceberg or it's just the iceberg, part of the iceberg in terms of what we need to do to optimize for GEO.
Yeah, so I see it now. So I think luckily I've done a good job building my EAT score. Been doing this forever, right? So whenever I put up content now on, the Boulder SEO marketing website, the blog post, or on the Chris Raulf, that stuff ranks so fast, right? Because Google, they trust me. They know Chris has been around for a
Yep.
while. He talks at conferences, etc., etc. So building your EAT score, that's it's in my opinion, it's probably the most important thing that
Huge.
anybody can do in, the time of GEO. So
And it's really interesting too. You mentioned it, and some of these folks who've actually, there are a lot of people who've been writing and publishing for a long time, but not following EEAT guidelines. So
yeah.
they're not seen as an authority. They might have expertise that they've shown, but because they haven't checked the boxes for EEAT, they're sort of it it's spilling out on the floor. And
Yeah.
what they need to do is they need to make sure it's working right. You're in the space and you get it, you understand it, you're building based on it, and there are a lot of folks who do the same thing. And I think now for the businesses that we work with, it's making sure there's authorship, making sure we're talking to experience, and we're giving authority where it belongs because quite often, Boulder SEO is probably in Google parlance synonymous with Chris Raulf at some point, right? So one begets the other and then they help each other out. And the idea that there's an expert behind the curtain at a lot of these companies who's been silent for so long because the content isn't attributed to Jim Johnson or Jennifer Jones, whatever the case may be. They've written a ton and published a ton, but they're not taking enough credit for it. So they've got a ways to go. They've got to climb.
So I had an interesting conversation with a potential new client. I'm not going to say who they were, but it's somebody who is very private. It's a landscaping business, and he does not want his name on the website, doesn't want to have a bio, that, doesn't want to have to do anything published to the website that associates him with the business. I'm like, dude, I don't think we can help you. You're gonna fire us in 3, 4 months because this is the most critical thing right now. And he was gonna sign on, and I was not gonna take his money because it would take so long to build his SEO.
Hmm.
I didn't feel okay, taking his money if he's not willing to be an active participant in this project. So,
Let
yeah.
me let me flip that question for you. Given that he wants to stay private, would you ever adopt a different persona within that business to try and help that grow?
Yeah, so that was my alternative, right? It's like, hey, who else can we use? And sadly, there was not really anybody that he was willing to offer up for that. So unfortunately, I think right now it's not a good fit. We're trying to educate them on the importance of EAT and connecting a person to a business. So right now, I don't feel comfortable taking that money because it's
No,
not.
I wouldn't either. Well,
Yeah.
and you're right. I think you said it best when you said he's going to fire you in 3 months,
Yeah, and then
because there's
yeah,
only so many technical optimizations you can make on his website today, right? You can fix some things and clean things up, but unless you're building out that profile, because I think the way that the algorithm is evolving is that it wants to feed on that content. I think I always say this, and I still say it, is that Google loves WordPress. And obviously, it's the most popular and prevalent CMS on the planet. But Google loves categories and tags, and it loves that
Yeah.
hierarchy. And if you can fit that into nice pillar pages, then you're going to be doing really, really nice stuff. But again, you need that authorship. You need somebody needs to put a stake in the ground to say it's mine. That's mine. This is right here. It's mine. And if you're not willing to do that, I think there's a key point here in that your business risks being left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyhow, it's we could go on forever, I think.
And we have.
Let's uh, let's talk about human oversight versus AI autonomy in content creation. What is the optimal balance, in your opinion, between AI generated content? I just spoke about that, and human
Mhm.
involvement in SEO content creation for agencies, especially considering Google's helpful content creation guidelines. How?
So,
Oh, I'm not done yet.
your question goes on and on and on. All right, keep going.
Uh, how can agencies ensure they maintain content quality, uniqueness, and adherence to principles while leveraging AI for efficiency?
So, I have an opinion on part of this that may be contrary to what other people believe, and that is, I think some of Google's helpful content rules were published because they were behind on AI,
Yeah.
and they still might be catching up. And I think that it was a little bit of a genuflect reaction by Google to say, no, 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 don't publish AI content. We're not going to rank it. We're not going to index it. What and I think it was because they had an uncertain moment. I wouldn't say uncertain future, but uncertain moment there. And I think now when we talk about governance, and we need to have these conversations. In fact, I have a good friend who started an ethics and governance agency around the use of AI in large companies, and sadly, he was premature to the market by
Yeah.
about 2 years because nobody was thinking about compliance and governance. And you remember, because I know you've been at this a long time, early days of social media. Remember, companies didn't want anybody posting on their social channels. They didn't want social channels. Legal had to get involved in larger companies, and they had to review things. Then they had brand guidelines for social media posting. And now, yes, there are probably still some of those guidelines, but it's more all bets are off, right? Some of the things you see on social from brands are they're tongue. This, some people are having fun. Some people screw up. But I think in terms of AI, you're seeing companies now try to figure out what the balance means for them and how to leverage it. And I think as agencies and or content producers, that the balance between AI content, you and I are different, right? I'm going to use it, and I might have it write a brief for me. And as much as Mini Steve is pretty talented and good at what he does, he's not Steve. And I still want to edit some of that. And I've also, people are now, we're raising an eyebrow to online content. So many people that I run into on a daily basis and have conversations with about the content they're consuming online, they complain that everything they read seems to lack quality editing, and they swear that somebody generated it in AI and simply published it,
Yeah.
and they just spit it out. So my thoughts on it are that while you might be able to replace your copywriters, and I'm sorry, copywriters, but there's a truth in some of this, is that you may be able to replace some of your copywriters. Please don't replace your editors. Oh,
So, very interesting point. Two things. I'll make 2 points real quick. So we build our AI agent BSM Copilot, right? That automates of the outlining, even pre-populates bullet points, and even some content that are then
hmm
edited, right? So we just created a case study on how we helped a cat breeder basically fill their pipeline for the next 4, 5, 6 months. And we used our tool to create a press release, fully AI generated content. That freaking thing hallucinated, put a different name of the owner. Oh man.
Oh no.
Yeah, so we have two
Uh,
editors, edit review.
mm-hmm.
They think about checking is the name correct, right? Because
Yeah.
it was a great press release, except the name of
Except
the
the name.
author was wrong.
Ouch.
Okay, so it was a good point, right, for me to make, like, hey guys, we gotta check everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's one
Well,
thing. So go ahead.
yeah, I think the other piece of this is that if we're going to use it, and we will use it, and we should use it, is that we can't take it for granted. And I
Yeah,
think based on your content, and a lot of these organizations, take an engineering firm, for instance, right? A lot of times there's a certain structure to the content or a certain style of the content, and it could be based on writer as well. Is that if you're going to be using AI, build yourself a simple, and listen, this is stupid simple, but it works. Build yourself a stupid simple spreadsheet with check boxes for every area of that article that you need to review,
yeah,
and don't do it yourself. If you've created the content, listen, if you're a small shop and you don't have anybody else to do it, I ask you to make this list, but be diligent about it. But check the basics. Check your punctuation, check the spelling, check, I don't know how to cover a hallucination check. Check names, check references, citations, because sometimes you're going to get some goofy citations, and you have to know the space that you're writing in so that you can check the AI. And Chris, I know you've had this constantly, right? How many times does the AI write something that it wants you to believe? It's not necessarily hallucinating, but it's also not the truth. It's not the facts that you were looking for, but you know the facts, and we can't update the AIs ourselves. All we can do is talk back to it and tell it it's wrong. So you have to make sure that your content is factually correct too.
yeah,
So check your facts. If you're building a position on, I don't know, Blue Origin's last flight to the moon, or taking all the Jeff Bezos's fiance into space with her girlfriends, and you're writing an op-ed piece on that. Make sure you're checking the facts that come out of AI, because otherwise you run the risk of looking really, really foolish. And if there's one huge turnoff, people are gonna walk away if your content's crap. And if AI produces crap, well then it's no better than you producing crap.
yeah. And I mean, this was a really good wake-up call, right? They emailed me last night, late at night. I'm like, wow, that was a big mistake. Like, I'm glad it happened, so it will never happen again. Yeah,
Right. Well, that's it, right? We have to make the mistakes so we can fix them.
yeah,
And then they become part of our process. But yeah, stupid simple checklist if you're creating content with AI, and save that. Save the history of you going through the checklist and the name of the article and
yeah,
the piece, and link to it, so that if you ever need to go back through, you can check it. And just a new tab in the spreadsheet every time you publish something new, so that you
absolutely.
can check and balance yourself.
Yeah. Completely agree. Then my second point, so I just spoke in Barcelona, Spain at a localization, globalization, translation conference about how AI is going to impact the global language industry and digital marketing.
Huge.
So that industry is a little bit ahead of our industry in that linguists, they already have been mostly replaced by AI,
Hmm.
machine translation tools, right? So most of the linguists back in the day that used to translate, they're now editors, they're proofreaders. You know what? I pissed off a few people with my presentation where I just ripped off the band-aid. I'm like, look, this is
You
happening.
have to.
Yeah. And this is happening with writers. I do believe there's going to be a market for niche writers that are
Oh yeah.
experts in, things that only few people, are experts in. So those are always, or for the foreseeable future, going to exist. But I agree, most writers, they will probably have to adapt to the new reality that they're going to
Hmm.
have to edit, proofread AI generated content. Any thoughts on this before we move on to the last question?
So, um, I agree with you. There's also the burning question of, where does the new information come from? So how does it get picked up? And where does that how does that get synthesized? And I was messing with the AI the other in the back of an Uber, and I had some random question to ask myself, how much does AI know? So I asked about an old business in Chicago that I was very familiar with that has been gone for 15 or 20 years, and it had been around for 50 years before that. And Gemini couldn't come up with the business. I did one search and found a link to the business, fed the URL to Gemini, and it said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I couldn't find that." And it's this idea of we still need to produce good, high quality, first person,
Yeah.
factually intact content. And you talk about like niche writers, right? Engineers, you're launching a new product. Somebody's got to do the specs. Somebody has to write about it. And then that has to get fed into AI. And I think where we're gonna get to are AI sitemaps, right? I don't know if they're going to be unique sitemaps for AI, but we're talking about schema and improvements to schema. We're talking about speakable schema now and FAQ schema, and we're getting more schema. So we're structuring the data so that it's easier for them to read, easier for them to ingest. I think some of the AI crawlers are going to be much different from the typical web crawlers we've been working with the last 15, 20 years.
And that's actually going to be the last question that we're going to discuss here. What I want to bring up is that something that you mentioned, where does that content come from? So what we do now with our BSM Copilot system, right? It creates an outline based on many, many, many prompts, based on many things that we know for a fact. This is the content that needs to be on that page. And then guess what? We ask our clients to go through the outline step by step, record something like this, like we record now. We transcribe the feedback and then we run it through the AI again with first hand
Awesome.
input from the customer. Man, this is working amazingly well. It doesn't take a lot of time from the client because they don't want to spend time, right? Talking to us, but this is an easy way, 15, 20 minutes for them to provide source content to
It's
augment the
awesome.
outline. Yeah,
Well, and well, that's what, so historically, what we started doing with customers who, I'll put it in air quotes, couldn't take the time to write,
yeah,
is that you would do an interview. You'd do an interview with a transcript,
yeah,
and you'd spend 30 minutes on a Zoom such as this. Would we have half a dozen questions here? How
yeah.
many blog posts would this have become in the old world, right? 4 or 5 years ago, if you and I were having this conversation, a writer would watch and read the transcript and turn that into content, maybe around the questions, maybe around some other themes. Now you have the opportunity to slam this up into AI, or AI is listening already probably, and coming out with common themes and then giving that to not a writer, but an editor to play around with it and turn it into 4 or 5 pieces. And it's all first person and original content because we've just had this conversation. So now you've got great content, and then you can upload it. But now the time to market for 10 pieces of content from this interview is days instead of weeks. And it's just incredible.
I mean, Steve, believe me, we're going to turn this into a press release, into a few blog posts, social media, right? And it's not going to be written by a writer. It's going to be
No,
potentially reviewed by me. But
yeah,
yeah, source quality, high quality content generated by you and me as we speak.
it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I love the space we're in at the and the time we're in it. And it's funny because the bell's been ringing for decades. SEO is dead. Long live SEO, right? You've been in those conversations. And I love this evolution and the path we're on. SEO is not dead, but it's evolving very, very rapidly. And it's so much fun to watch this space right now.
Hey, that's one of my slides. So actually talking about that, that's a great gateway to the last question. The future of agent to agent communication and website optimization. So looking ahead to the future, a year maybe from now, or maybe 2 years, the future of agent to agent communication. How should SEO agencies advise their customers to adapt their websites and digital assets? What are the key considerations. You already mentioned schema, etc. For site structure, schema, and overall digital presence to ensure content is discovered, understood,
Hmm.
processed, and trusted by emerging AI agents. If you quickly want to, a lot of people don't know yet about what's going to happen in, the next year or two.
Hmm.
You take it away. I'm sure you have some cool insights here.
I think I'll go back to a little bit of the whole idea of sitemap and the idea of boxing up my content so that an agent can quickly and easily pick that up. And I think I'm going to weave in the point that you make about EEAT and keeping that top of mind. But then separately, there's some great work being done of people talking about what gets noticed in AI search results. And a lot of that are mentions and citations because the AI doesn't always bring up a human quote of our conversation. And then Steve said that sort of thing. Make sure business references are part of your content. Make sure, I hate to say this, but make sure you're focusing on your brand when you're talking about building out this library for an agent to be able to share, an agent to be able to understand. So it's some of that, but I think it's, man, I tell you, Chris, I probably need to dive in a little bit further because there's so many exciting things to think about. And the way you phrase the question makes me thinking of agent to agent communication as a future consideration. Is there's so many different opportunities there.
Yeah, so at DigiMarcon Houston, I think there was an exceptionally good presentation at the end. I forgot the name of the presenter, but that was the presentation. Very smart guy. Where, I mean, the reality is that in a few years from now, you and I are not going to search for information, or let's say, we're about to leave for Ireland and Scotland for a nice little vacation
Yep.
trip. I'm going to task an agent such as Runner
Yep.
Age. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that
Hmm.
agent. You can tell it, hey, my wife and I, we're gonna go on a 10-day vacation to Dublin. We have X amount of time, and we like to eat vegan food, and these are our interests, and blah blah blah. This tool, I'm testing it right now. You can connect it to your workspace, Gmail, all your
Hmm.
other applications that you use. If you're willing to give it your credit card, that thing will go out there and book the whole thing. It's insane.
Oh, it's crazy. I've only started dabbling with some of those
Yep.
tools, but the idea of planning a trip, give me up, book some dates and tell it I want to go to, like you said, go to Ireland. You can have it book your use. We're at a point where you can start booking itineraries.
Yeah, that's it,
It's
right?
crazy,
Yeah. So
crazy.
I tested it in like, hey, we're gonna go to Paris for a few days on another trip, and we want to see this and that. So I guess my point is, in the not so distant future, every industry is going to be impacted by agent to agent operation. Where, and
Has
to
to be.
your point, right, you mentioned it, websites, they need to be optimized, not just for search, but for site structure, as you mentioned, tags, right? A clear hierarchy, schema. That's so important. So I think the next gold mine that I'm already seeing out there, that's going to be optimizing websites for agent to agent
Yeah.
communication, not
Well,
just geo and search, right?
yeah.
That's the next thing.
Well, and I think too, the other thing that comes to mind for me are strategic relationships to complement whether you're the transaction component or the content component, right? It needs to come from somewhere. And if you can build more of those things for the AI to feed off of so that the agents can talk to one another and leverage third-party content within yours so that you can hit my agent and build your whole itinerary and you're going to get 12 pages of notes on wine tasting in Northern California and the wineries you should, the big wineries and little wineries and the places nobody else goes. That's available now. You could ask AI that question, but the next generation is telling it to book the trip.
Steve, there's so much more that we could talk about. Sadly, we've come to the end of this podcast.
No.
We'll do it again. We have so much more to talk about in the not so distant future. So Steve Krull, co-founder and CEO of Be Found Online, a really cool agency in the Chicago area. So go to befoundonline.com if you're in that area. We're competitors, Steve, right?
Co-opetition. I look at co-opetition,
Competition.
Chris. I'd rather have more friends than competitors in this space.
Yeah, no, I mean, this was a pleasure, Steve.
Oh,
I
it's
look
a
forward to
joy.
keeping in touch. And, why don't we have another chat maybe in 6 months down the road, see where we're at. Steve, anything else you want to share with our audience?
Well, we didn't even touch on video,
Oh my God.
and
Let's keep that for
and
next time.
that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
That's our topic for a few months down the road. We can go back and we can look at some test results for the content we're working on, and we can look at video because video tools are going a mile a minute right now. But I think our the real authenticity right now of content creators is coming through in video, and it's going to continue to do so if you want to make sure something's authentic. But in a year, I imagine that'll be challenged too by Mini Chris and Mini Steve.
Oh man, couldn't agree more. So let's save that topic for our next conversation. Steve, again, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show here. I look forward to our next conversation.
Ditto. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Steve. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, folks.